Let's go, pal.
Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, it's Fallout 4's 10th birthday. That makes me feel really old because this is really the game that got it all started. You see, for me, really the game that did start it was Fear 3. You can find Braceface Maddie doing a Fear 3 Let's Play on my first ever video on the channel. But a little bit forward from that point, I covered my most anticipated game of 2011, and that was Skyrim. I did rare weapon and armor guides for that. But after Skyrim cooled off on YouTube, your boy was lost for a few years. I was meandering from game to game, just kind of talking about whatever interested me, failed a lot, almost quit a bunch of times, but just kind of hung with it because overall, I enjoy doing this thing, man, and still do to this day. It wasn't until the end of 2014 when I saw a glimmer of hope, and that was Fallout 4's Survivor 2299 hoax. One of the best hoaxes in all of gaming because it got so many of us to believe that Bethesda was putting a real ARG teaser event together. Everything from Morse code to lines in the game and music playing and Vault Tech lines. Like, they just did everything in this hoax to get you to believe. And Bethesda shut it down a month later, and there I was, bitter as hell in my basement, yelling about it in a video, ranting to like 6K people. But that was everything to me, man. It was so disappointing. Not only because I wanted Fallout 4, but it was the first time that Maddie saw a little bit of growth on YouTube. But then hope would be restored when Bethesda finally, in summer of 2015, would tease Fallout 4. And with that, they'd also be announcing their first ever E3 2015 showcase. Certainly, if they're doing this, they have something big to show off, and they did. It was Fallout 4. It was a magnificent showcase of the game, and Bethesda surprised everyone by saying it would be out in 6 months. And those were the longest 6 months of my life. I could not believe that Bethesda actually decided to put out the game the same year simply because we were so accustomed to waiting forever for Fallout 4. And it's in those ways, those memories, that Fallout 4 solidified itself in my life. But when it comes to the game itself, a lot of that hype did carry into its release. I am Mr. Near Perfect after all, and I still do get a lot of grief for that take, like I'm out here defending it or something. I mean, some people come to me with that take like I threw a baby down a flight of stairs or something. Like, whoa, I'm not out here defending it. I think it was a very valuable mistake for me to make, though, because it did make me a better reviewer. But yeah, there was a lot of hype, no doubt about it, going into the launch of that game. And naturally, with Fallout 4 changing so much about the essence of Fallout, more looter shooter style, more voice protagonist, limited dialogue system, a lot of people have associated this term with Fallout 4, which is, it's a great game, it's just not a great Fallout game. So is it really that bad? We're going to be breaking that down here today across its DLC, the base game, but we're not going to talk too much about the new stuff Bethesda's done over the last 18 months between the next-gen update, which is all right on consoles, but also the new Anniversary Edition upgrade, which I just covered on my Mr. Matty Plays channel, and both of these updates are awful on PC. Not even just like PC, but if like you're a paying customer and you like Fallout and you like to be respected as a consumer, Bethesda did a really bad job pricing these things out and communicating with their fans. That aside, though, I want to kind of focus on just Fallout 4 holistically. What it does right, what it doesn't do so well, and kind of break it down 10 years later. Is it really as bad as people say? Let's talk about it, ladies and gentlemen. If you're new here and you're into nostalgic or retrospective content, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. All right, so for Fallout 4, I definitely nowadays fall in that camp of it's more a great game rather than a great Fallout game. I know that's definitely something tons of people say, but it's really accurate when you start to break it down. And for me, Fallout is my favorite thing in all of entertainment. So I study this thing like American history, for God's sakes. Like, I just break it down, replay it, study it, pore over it constantly, where like this is a thing I have to have organized in my brain. And so I do agree with that general consensus. However, with that in mind, I do think Fallout 4 is the beginning of a lot of interesting ideas that support that game well, that Bethesda turned into standard features for future games like 76, Starfield, probably Elder Scrolls 6, that really led to their downfall. And so I think a lot of people associate that hatred of those mechanics with Fallout 4 rather than, I think, the systems being undercooked in other games. What I'm beating around the bush at is things like settlement mode. This is something that is very much not traditional Fallout. You can play everything from Fallout 1 all the way to Fallout 3. And yeah, there's no like looting the junk and breaking it down into crafting materials and then using those crafting materials to build houses and whatnot. The play Fallout 4 was going for was a theme around rebuilding. When you look at its visual tone compared to other Fallout games, it's one of hope. And I do think that the idea of rebuilding the wasteland and bringing settlers together in a place works really well. Unfortunately, I found the system a little bit undercooked long term. It was addicting when it first came out, but then when you go for replay 1, 2, 3, and so on, that's where it starts to wear you down because you can't really reinvest yourself in something like that. It's kind of like just restarting a new Minecraft world over and over and over, which I know some people like, but you get my gist. And it comes at the sacrifice of the main thing that drives a lot of people's love for Fallout is the people, the factions, and these locations in this post-apocalyptic world that have been transformed to inhabit these people. When you're coming in and you're stacking like 40 towers on top of each other and kind of making a mess of the wasteland, it's its own type of fun in that settlement mode, but it takes away from a lot of the things that make Fallout great. And so you're kind of left with two key settlements in Diamond City and Good Neighbor to sort of bring you that traditional Fallout stuff. And those are great towns. They have great moments, everything from the memory den to like finding Nick Valentine inside Diamond City. Like there's good stuff in both these towns, but they feel so confined, so limited to the rest of the game, which is a lot of shooting galleries, unfortunately. But it's this settlement mode that defines the entirety of Fallout 4 because it then splinters out to now you have less towns, so you have more of those shooting galleries. So now these shooting galleries have to have purpose within them. So I think it works for Fallout 4 and what it's trying to go for. My key issue really lies in that Bethesda now insists on putting this in every game afterwards. They put it in 76, they put it in Starfield, and Starfield was easily the biggest mismatch for me. It felt so pointless. But I think for Fallout 4, it's like an interesting experiment that I didn't want to see again after that game. And obviously we know that's not the case. So even though I do like it, it definitely is not something I touch nearly as often in subsequent playthroughs. But there's tons of people, I'm sure there are people down below right now that love that mechanic. That's why they play Fallout. And that's, again, a sign of how much this series has evolved and transformed. Which, speaking of which, these locations turning into shooting galleries put a big focus on loot in Fallout 4. This is something I've always loved in Bethesda Game Studios games, and actually a non-Bethesda Game Studios game did it super well recently that I played and reviewed, called The Outer Worlds 2. It really underlines why I care about great, distinct loot and role-playing games, because it completely shapes how you play the game. It's not just, oh, I got something cool, but that weapon had a unique property to it, and that really excited me when I got my hands on it. It defined my character more and more, and it also served as a memory for that awesome quest line that I just engaged with. Like, that's what this unique loot accomplishes, and Obsidian learned that from Bethesda Game Studios, who did it so properly for so many games. But with Fallout 4, Bethesda was like, oh, we hear you. After Skyrim, you love rare weapons and armor. We're going to give you that with this legendary weapon system. So now you have these enemies that repopulate the map constantly, but they're legendary tiers, and they'll drop 1-star, 2-star items. Another thing that carried over into Fallout 76, admittedly something more fitting over there because that's a game that's live service and needs more recurrent loot, but Fallout 4 brings in this more recurrent loot drop system and then waters down its own pool of loot, because then you start to see recycled assets across the legendaries that keep dropping, but also your unique weapons. Some of my favorite weapons in Fallout 4 are like the Overseer's Guardian as well as December's Child, and they look the exact same, but they use different ammo types. It's frustrating. It's the main thing about Fallout 4 that long-term has bothered me so much. And again, with 76 and Starfield, Bethesda has only doubled and tripled down on this element in their games. And I think this is something that makes Fallout 4 a bit of a worse game, because while it shoots better than any current Fallout game, I know that's not saying much, but when you look at how Fallout 3 played, I know we really weren't there for the gunplay. It's not really worth it at the end of the day because you just get such watered down, boring loot. So yeah, while I don't really hate the settlement mode as much, I really am not crazy about the loot game. But I have a hot take for you. The voice protagonist. I don't hate it. You know, I don't hate it. I don't think it's something, again, I ever want to see in another Fallout game. I think a voice protagonist experiment may have been better in a spin-off, not a mainline title where like you have an established DNA and you probably shouldn't change that much. But I do like it because I think with Bethesda's goals, again, kind of what I talked about with settlement mode, for me at least, I think they accomplished some of what they set out to do here, which was trying to push just a little bit more emotion out of the characters. Fallout has a history of fantastic companions, and I think Fallout 4 has some really great ones. I love Kate and her story about drug addiction, but that was really pushed by Katie Townsend's performance. Piper is very charismatic, and I don't think that would have been done well without Courtney Ford, but it kind of takes two to tango, and the talents of Brian T. Delaney and Courtney Taylor did a great job, I think, bringing the sole survivor to life. In turn, the whole story about the Institute and your son, they tried to get more personal with it. Again, I don't think it's as bad as people say it is. It's just not incredible. So I understand, again, why folks come in, they're like, it's not worth the trade-off. But I think in those moments, the quiet moments where you're interacting, you're talking, and they're trying to push the emotion more, I think it does a good job. It's just, again, taking away from why I play Fallout. Like playthrough 1, it works the best. But just like with settlement mode and so many other elements of this game, when you come back for playthrough 2, 3, 4, 5, then you're like, oh man, it just feels so limited. And of course, the main thing that holds it back is now this entire voice dialogue system is limited to a nice guy, kind of nice, but also trying to be mean guy, sarcastic, and maybe asking a question that's also sort of like a joke. It leads to a main character that I'm trying to play as myself, but I'm not really hearing myself, and the dialogue options on screen don't really write that out well. And so there's popular mods that straight up remove the voice actors from the game. There's also popular mods that turn the sort of up, down, left, right sort of dialogue system into a scroll box and actually write out the full responses that make it a more traditional Fallout game. It's, again, something I don't hate, but I didn't want to really ever see again, which is why I was so happy when Starfield came around. They're like, we're doing a silent protagonist. I'm like, excellent. They learned. But overall, the Commonwealth itself was nice to explore. The factions within it were a little bit If you're a Blade Runner fan, which I wasn't at the time of playing Fallout 4, but I love Blade Runner now, easily a top 5 movie of all time for me. So playing Blade Runner and kind of seeing the whole synth storyline, it is a little bit familiar, which was something that was unfamiliar to me at the time, but it kind of makes me like the whole Institute storyline with the synths in Fallout 4. I mean, it asks a lot of the same questions as Blade Runner, but I think it's kind of fun to play around in that sort of universe, especially with great companion characters who do embrace their synthetic lifestyle, like a Nick Valentine. And I even love what they kind of did with the Brotherhood of Steel. Like Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 3, one of the main complaints that the hardcore fan base had about this game was that Brotherhood of Steel were like the good guys, and they were never really framed like that in Fallout 1 and 2. They were more like, give us your technology, we don't trust you, we know how to handle it, we are the stewards of technology. And I really love that version of them. I only came to know about that right before Fallout 4 came out, when I did my first ever playthroughs of Fallout 1 and 2. But Fallout 3 returned them to this sort of like, we're the Eastern chapter of the Brotherhood and we're really nice. But Fallout 4 kind of brings them more to that ruthlessness. Like, we don't care if you've been one of us for a while. If you're a synth, you're dead to us. I like that part of the Brotherhood of Steel. I like Maxon as a character, especially because Elder Maxon, you see him in Fallout 3 as a kid. So Bethesda does a good job of carrying those little torches over. And so I think that stuff is good, but it's the other surrounding factions, the Commonwealth Minutemen. I know it's the whole meme of like, I'll mark another settlement on your map. Yeah, the railroad especially to me is like the biggest underachiever in this game. I think it could have achieved so much more with the history it was playing with as the Underground Railroad, but what it also meant for the plot. But it just led to a lot of factions that unfortunately felt very one-dimensional. Like the Commonwealth Minutemen would do no wrong. The railroad, of course, are going to oppose anything and everything that the Institute is doing, and there was no real complexity in any of these relationships. That's why I think the Brotherhood of Steel presents the most interesting storyline in this game, because it is the most, I put this in quotes because I'm not trying to oversell it, but morally complex of everything else there, because they have a certain way of doing things and they don't budge for anything, which causes conflict with certain characters that are trying to ally themselves with you, or maybe they become your enemy. So all in all, Fallout 4 becomes this looter shooter, crafting driven game with an all right story, and it's still fun to explore and play, but it definitely doesn't hold the same power as a video game like a Fallout 3 does for me, or a New Vegas does for me. Fallout 4, and a lot of the power it holds for me, really lies in just the memories built around it. The friendships I made leading up to that launch, the friendships I made after launch, the mistakes I made with the game. I made like 2 catastrophic mistakes in my initial review and then a follow-up video talking about like how people should respect Fallout 4 more. And I was like peak fanboy, and like I had to be brought down a peg. Like that was a valuable life lesson. So like without Fallout 4, I wouldn't have been able to extract so much value of growing as a creative. But I think also Bethesda needed to do a bit of reflecting as an RPG developer themselves. The argument that Fallout 4 isn't a great RPG was fair to say, and it still is fair to say to this day. So that's where we get into the DLC, because now Bethesda's taking in all this feedback. Okay, we got something people kind of love. We have these issues. How do we address them? We have a few updates that come out over the course of the season pass. Automatron is the first one that just drops a bunch of mechs into the game, a little 3-hour quest line that's all right, but now basically they've added in robot encounters in the open world map, and you can customize your own robot companion. I thought this was a nice little expansion on the actual settlement mode stuff, a good starter for the season pass. Nothing really wrong with this one. Then they do Wasteland Workshop, and like that's the worst thing of all time. Any Workshop DLC, like I'm not going to talk about it at all, just because I think it's just Bethesda's trying to make money and they're trying to make it quick. So then this gets us into what is my personal favorite DLC that Bethesda has ever made, and that is Far Harbor. Yes, it is right up there side by side with something like Shivering Isles. It's up there side by side with some of Skyrim's DLC, Fallout 3's DLC. Like I think Far Harbor is that great because it is such a beautiful response to everything wrong with Fallout 4. You see, at the time, a lot of people were convinced Bethesda could not do a deep role-playing experience because of the way that Fallout 4 was constructed, but also just like the engine. People were blaming Creation Engine as a reason Bethesda couldn't make big role-playing games again. So here comes Far Harbor. It's this 20-hour storyline. You've got 3 interesting factions that are all kind of vying for the throne, if you want to call it that. And you have choice and consequence, but also a little bit of skill checking, actually unique loot, incredible side quests, pure atmosphere, really deep conversations like one you can have with Dima on like what makes you a synth. It's that sort of stuff that made Fallout 4 feel redeemable. Right then and there, you play Far Harbor and you go, okay, they can do it, man. They can. And it's that almost, I hate to use the term, but like abusive relationship you get into with them where you're like, see, they can do it. This is why we believe. And it's this one little almost like 20-hour needle in a otherwise 200-hour haystack where it's like, this is brilliant. They did a great job here. The exploration, the writing, the choices, the factions, the skill checking, the side quest lines, everything's here. The music, the atmosphere, they did a great job. So now we're like, okay, what's next? More workshop stuff. Really disappointing. Now you get to build like your own vault and stuff. Awful. But what we all set on our calendars was Nuka World. Here we go. Bethesda's back. Another big expansion similar to that of Far Harbor. And now the big complaint with Fallout 4 has been you can't be evil. And that's also fair to say. One of the worst things about Fallout 4 still to this day is I can't be evil. It's unbelievable to me, even with the voice character, that you couldn't just do a good playthrough and an evil playthrough. Like the main story doesn't even have ending slides. It just all kind of ends the same. It's easily the most infuriating thing, which is why Fallout 4 is such a tough game to do like a full replay of, because it's just going to go the exact same every way. So Bethesda steps in. They're like, all right, we got you guys. We're going to let you be evil. We're making Nuka World. We're going to let you go to this whole amusement park, which is on a visual level awesome. The diversity of locations is great, but it's Fallout 4 proper again. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at stuff. Fallout 4 is a looter shooter in a lot of ways, and Nuka World's more of that. It's not like Far Harbor where there's deep, intricate quest lines and moral ambiguity. There's none of that really here. It's good or bad. Do you want to be a raider or no? That's this whole entire storyline. And then it carries a little bit into the base game. You can then take the raiders and start attacking settlements and taking them over that way. It's cool. It's interesting. It feels like a cheap, gimmicky way to insert evil character playthroughs, but it doesn't have an influence on the overall main storyline. It doesn't let you change how you behave across the entirety of the game. It's purely what I call headcanon fodder. And so while I like Nuka World and I like going to this setting and shooting things in this setting and getting all the cool loot from this setting and seeing characters from Fallout 3 again in this setting. It's awesome in that way. It's fan servicey, no doubt about it, but it's more Fallout 4 in the ways that I have not really loved over the years. And so you start to recognize when looking back on Fallout 4, a lot of these are just bad choices. Like Bethesda can do it. We see it with something like a Far Harbor. Like they can choose to make something smaller, more compact and reactive. They just don't anymore. And Fallout 4 is the underlining of all of that. The loot, how endless it is, the procedural content with finding settlements on your map, how endless that is, the settlement mode, how endless that is. These games become bottomless in a bad way, where Skyrim was bottomless in a good way, because Skyrim was like, you kept digging, and eventually you'd hit the bottom. Eventually, right? But they would do things like procedural quest lines where they'd say like, okay, you're digging, you're doing the Thieves Guild quest line, you're trying to restore honor to them, you're digging, and then you actually hit the bottom and you restore that honor and it's worth something now. But in Fallout 4, you'll keep digging. I'll find another settlement and put it on your map, dig, another settlement and put it on your map, and it never ends. That is the problem. If Fallout 4 was a one-time experiment, I think I would be a lot more forgiving of it. But nowadays, as someone who has covered Bethesda for half their lives, it does represent a lot of the issues that really began with Bethesda as a company that they have not learned from in their last two games in 76 and Starfield. So ultimately, is it really that bad? I don't think so. I do like Fallout 4 a lot, but am I going to sell it to you like I did in 2015? No. What I would tell you is it's a very problematic game in a lot of ways, especially if you're a hardcore Fallout fan like me. It's got a lot of issues, but there is a certain level of endearment I have for the game. Hype aside, just the location. I love Boston in real life, and I love exploring it in the post-apocalyptic world. I do like a lot of the loot. I love the characters in this game. I kind of dig the Blade Runner style story, even if it's very much like redundant. I don't know. There's a lot I dig about it, but there's also a lot of problems with it. And so ultimately Fallout 4, yeah, you're a bit of a confusing, conflicting game. It's kind of why I like you, but I know over the years, I just love the memories of you more than anything. So those are my thoughts on Fallout 4 after 10 years. I'd love to hear yours down below, so fire away. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll catch you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.